Hello, Flosstube. Hello, returning peoples. This is episode 28, I want to say. No, 29. Yes, 29. Wouldn't you know? It's episode 29. I apologize for not being here last week. As you can hear me now, I was unwell. I continue to be unwell, but I am getting better. Slowly but surely. Surely but slowly. I'm back. I'm on the mend. What have I been up to? Well, not this week, but since you've last seen it, I did do some work. Let's just jump right on in here, shall we? I really hope this one didn't. No, I think I stole the the needle from this one. I worked on Hocus Pocus by Prairie Schooler, which is book 197, which I, of course, love. I need to work on it more. But I thought I did a fair bit of work on this one. I have gotten more of this border in, and the bottom half is definitely done on this, and I got the circle done, and the top part started, and I'm working into the third one. Now it only goes across 3, so the witch who's with the all-seeing ball, she is the last one. So basically this whole thing is probably going to fit in the middle here, which will be nice. Not that it means I'm gonna have any leftovers where I'm gonna be able to use it, but whatever. So yeah, got work on that done. And this one is a little, it's my middle ground because there's 5 colors. Apparently 5 colors is just enough to be a middle ground when you're working on something that has 2 colors. It is, I tell you, it is. I say so, I make it so. The other thing I've been working on is, of course, my red and the black 2. Pardon the glare. Of course, I have all my DMCs in here in case I need more. I am almost finished the first skein of black. The Hocus Pocus I'm doing on 28 count antique white Monaco Lugana even weave from Michaels. And the red and the black I'm doing on 35 count Peeps Lost Sheep linen. It's a 12 by 17 piece, and it is getting there. Considering I had to rip out basically the whole center motif and start that again, I'm surprised at how well I'm doing. But I picked this one up. I was working on it last night. Last night I got a lot of the central box here filled in, and the B and C. So I'm getting somewhere. And I should point out, look at my cute little needle minder. It looks like my cat Frankie. I got that from the Crafter's Waypoint on Etsy, who is my friend Palette PC. And she sells needle minders. And I may have got one of each of the cats because they're friggin' adorable. You can't go wrong with the cute little ridiculous kitties. You can't. So, hop on over there and check them out. Time for some coffee. I need a coffee break. Those are what I've really been working on in the last little bit. I might have done some work on Whimsy, but I don't remember, so I didn't bring her, because I didn't think it was enough to actually be like, hey, look, there's work done on this. Because to me, it would be like me going, hey, there's work done on it. Can you find it? Because I can't. And that just seems wrong. Now, I was asked a question that I will, in the comments, and you can feel free to ask questions. I will answer them as I can. Which was, what is the difference between natural and non-natural dyeing? So, which is a good question because I have the naturally dyed fabrics. So, let's see. how can I best explain naturally dyed? Well, this particular one was dyed using a technique called eco-printing, wherein I used bark in this case, and one sec. Sorry, I had a little pop-up thingy come over, and I just had to stop and start again. So, with this one, I did a technique called eco-printing, which you can only do with natural dyes, wherein I took in this case, I believe it was a stick of some kind. No, I used chopsticks, that's what I used. And I wrapped these around the chopsticks after treating them, and as I was wrapping them, I layered in pieces of bark. And the pieces of bark are what give me the shaping. Once I had that all done, I tied it very tightly with a cotton that I use in dyeing yarn too, for tying up stuff. It is a crocheter's cotton. It's just a big spool of crocheter's cotton. Wound that around it really good to get it good and tight so that I would get those blocks of color, and then I stewed it for several hours. The major difference between natural dyeing and non-natural dyeing is that natural dyeing uses materials that are generally found naturally occurring in the world, in so much as they are not a chemical composition. When I'm dyeing yarn, I use fiber reactive acid dye. There's also other dyes that would be used. If I was dyeing cotton, I would use a different dye, but I'll speak to the difference between fiber reactive acid dyes, and which would dye your silks, your wools, your nylons, and a natural dye, which will dye, cotton, silk, wool, nylon. So, if I wanted to get, I'm just using this because it's right here, this purple, okay, so this one is basically the purpley blue color, right? So this one was not eco-printed, this one was vat dyed in a logwood mixture. So in order to get the color pulled out of the wood chips, you soak it in a solution of something. For these particular woods, oh, this wasn't logwood, this is alkanet. Anyway, for wood chips, it's usually something alcoholic. For lichen, it's acetone. It depends on what natural dye it is. When it comes to wood chips, it's generally something alcoholic, some form of alcohol, to pull that out, and that takes weeks. So you literally put it in a mason jar full of alcohol, and you leave it for 4 or 5 days. You drain it off, you put more alcohol in. You keep doing that until you've sucked all the color out of the chips of wood, which you have to break down or what have you, or shavings of wood, and then you strain it afterwards. There's a lot more processes involved in natural dyeing. However, it comes with naturally occurring things like in wood chips, cochineal, which is the leftover husk of a bug, which gives you a very pretty pink. You've got, I've seen people use onion skins, red cabbage, beets. The only thing is, if you use something that's edible, it's not going to be light fast. Just so you know, no matter what you treat it with, that is not going to be light fast. You will get a lovely purple with red cabbage, but it will be gone in a few months. Just so you know. You want to use the barks. You want to use the naturally occurring mulches, your plant life that you wouldn't eat tends to last longer. In order to naturally dye, you have to treat the yarn first, or the fiber. You have to mordant it. Whether that be with a heavy metal, which some people use. There's iron, copper. You could use rusty nails have been used, I've seen. Tannin. There are certain ones that are so toxic you can't purchase them anymore that were used back in the olden days if you do the research. Tannic acid, of course, is very, very volatile, And very few places sell it, and even fewer people will work with it because it's annoying and it's hard. But the most basic one that's used is completely human safe, which is alum and cream of tartar. Alum is a pickling spice, so if you've eaten pickles, you're fine. And cream of tartar, of course, is yet another spice you would find, which is scrapings from the insides of wine barrels. Is actually what cream of tartar is. So pre-mordanting with an alum cream of tartar is not going to get you the same like boldness you're going to get with the copper, the iron, or I've never done tannic acid. I've only ever done iron. And that, for me, ferrous sulfate, that is as far as I'm willing to go without, like, okay, I could kill somebody if I don't do this right. Like, I could kill someone in my household. It wouldn't kill anybody who buys my stuff, because at that point, it's all been dealt with. But if you spill it in your household, or I have pets, so I generally use the least toxic, non-toxic versions. You know, nobody's allowed around that stuff. Except for me, and I have gloves, and like I have a whole setup I break out when I do this stuff, because there's a misnomer that naturally dyed is somehow better, or like better for the environment or better for people. It's not. It's actually more dangerous. And not dangerous. Like if you were using tannic acid, but not many people do. Industrial applications do use tannic acid. And I don't recommend it, but you know, you're taking twice as long, you're setting it twice as hard, you're using, like, yeah, they're naturally occurring chemicals, but heavy metal is still not good for you. And then, like, I like doing it because it's fun, and I like playing with the stuff. Because, you know, my brother's a chemist. I come from naturally we're really into that kind of stuff. However, having said that, the reason people prefer to use fiber reactive dyes or all these other dyes, I use Dharma fiber reactive dyes for dyeing my yarn, or jacquard, or Procyon or whatever. I have that too. Is because it's easier to control and it's less toxic. Okay. Sure, the trees, like, tree gunk is not going to kill you. It's not. Nor is our alum or cream of tartar. Ferrous sulfate, yeah, that's going to kill you. Is the stuff I'm going to use when I'm doing non-natural dye going to kill me? Well, if I ate it, yeah. But it's probably... they're on par, it's just different. People seem to associate the natural with being less. It has the exact same environmental impact if you do it properly, because when you're dyeing with regular fiber reactive dyes, right? That means it's an acid, fiber reactive acid dyes are what I use. So the acid is what makes it stick to it. For acid, like the mordanting process with natural dyeing is your alum, your cream of tartar, and you boil whatever you're doing. So to mordant something, you boil whatever you're going to be doing in it for an hour, and then you let it sit overnight. When I'm doing other stuff, when I'm doing fiber reactive dyes, then I'm going to wash it with something like a citropol to strip out any of the remaining oils or greases that may have been left on or I'm taking out the starch if it's from these things. I'm removing traces of everything. I just want the base. And then I'm going to put the dye on it, or I'm going to immerse it in the dye. One moment. Okay, I had a cough. That was a bigger cough than usual. Okay, so when I'm using the fiber reactive dyes, I wash them, I remove everything that's basically been left on them from the machining process, and then I put the dye on them, and then I add a citric acid. Citric acid is used in making gummy bears or making bath bombs. I use a food grade citric acid, so it's not going to hurt anything. Or you can use vinegar. pure white distilled vinegar, great old vinegar. And that is what attaches the dye to the fabric or the fiber that you're using. So I guess the basic big honking difference is that one uses completely chemically made things to affix dye to this stuff. One does not. One uses stuff that naturally occurs in nature. But just because it naturally occurs in nature doesn't... I'm a big old hippie. And I'm fine with being a big old hippie. You know, I like my reduce, recycle, reuse just as much as the next person. But I'm reticent to say natural dyeing is better or anything because it's just different. It's equally as complex. It's equally as fine-tuned as regular dyeing. But the big difference is one is naturally occurring in nature. I can go hunting for natural dye stuffs, which I have done. To dye with lichen, I have found naturally occurring lichen that is dead, and lichen is a kind of a moss or an algae that occurs on the coasts. Or, you know, I could go and pick milkweed or thistles and dry them and break them down and stew out the colors, because you do have to stew. In order to dye with them, you boil what your dye stuff is, and you use cheesecloth and you strain it out so you don't get all the particles in it. So, for instance, I'm using bark. I put a lot of bark in a pot of water, or, well, no, because I have to use the alcohol with the bark. Okay. I'm going to use cochineal, which is ground up bug husks, leftover bug husks. So I've mulched those, put them in a thing of water. I stew them for an hour, maybe 2. I strain out the little bits and particles with cheesecloth, and then I put the yarn in and I simmer it for yet another 2 or 3 hours. That's the other difference. It takes twice as long. Because to impart the color, you have to work a lot harder to get it, and you have to work a lot harder to put it on something. It does, however, look really pretty. I'm not a big fan of pastels, but it does give you some nice pastels. I do like the bright grays. You can get the shades of gray are just amazing. The purples are pretty. I like some of the pinks. I'm not as into the yellows that I can get. I can get a lot of yellows, though. An asinine amount of yellow. So, I hope that explains everything. I apologize to anyone who found that completely boring, but that is the big difference. That is a little bit into the difference of how I dye when I dye those two things. There's a completely different setup, completely different amount of things. Now I'm going to go put this up, and I'm probably going to have a nap because I'm friggin' tired. And that's all I worked on. I got no haul except for the needle binders. Alrighty, well, have a great week. I will talk to you next week. Bye.